Hello, my name is Renne Soberg and I live in Baldwin, Washington, Wisconsin. And I just wanted to thank Gladys for inviting me to speak here for the ORI conference. I just wanted to give a short story as far as how I got introduced to dowsing and how I use dowsing and how maybe we can use dowsing to help get through this pandemic and these turbulent times that we are living in right now. I was first exposed to dowsing some 30 years ago. I was working at the University of Washington in plant research, and I was walking across the grounds there, which are state facilities, and there's all kinds of water pipes and underground wires and everything going every direction. And a man with a backhoe was there, and he was going to dig a trench. And you know, a lot of this stuff is not documented. And so he comes out with these pair of odd-looking rods, and he starts walking up and down, and I ask him what he's doing, and he says he's looking for water lines that might be hidden before he digs, so he doesn't hit them. I said, "You're using those wires?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Do they work?" And he looked at me like I was a dumb one. He said, "Well, of course they work. What do you think?" You know. So that was my first exposure to it, a little intriguing at the time. You're in the middle of a very scientific place, and here you have a guy walking around with a couple of coat hangers finding underground pipes and wires. And then later on, many years later, I was working in medicinal herbs in Minnesota, and I was working with vet medicines, and I was working with a vet in southern Wisconsin, and he invited me to come to his conference. And so I went to his workshop, and it was a 3-day conference, and the last day was on this topic of dowsing. And what is this dowsing? And there we learned how to find ley lines and geopathic stress points and this type of thing. And we actually went out on a farm and looked for lines for stray voltage. Now, I had not expected this at all, but I sure am thankful for that day that I got to spend in that conference. And that kind of opened up a whole new area on this dowsing idea. Well, then there's a big skip. Some time goes by, and I got a terrible crank in my shoulder, so bad that I couldn't hardly move it. And in the meantime, my wife at that time had brought a little booklet in that she had gotten from a friend, and that was a digest from ORI. So I happened to page through this little booklet and started reading, and it piqued my interest. And it talked about things like Raymond Grace and his work with water, his finding insight by putting his feet into a pond of water and how that might work. And I also found some information on even EFT, which exposed me to that, and a practice called Sanjivini, that's in practice in India. So that cramp in my shoulder, that was a very informative, life-changing day for me. And you know, I really haven't had that cramp in my shoulder since. I guess some of those methods must have worked. Well, then I pursued this interest, and I went to conferences such as the ones in ORI, and I went to and did some studying down in the Four Corners down in Colorado, and it's really opened up my life. I use it in very simple ways, like one of the fun ways that we use it is going to a restaurant and look on the menu, and you don't know the first thing about what's good and bad, and so you get out the pendulum and you look at the menu, and sometimes it takes you to the back of the menu, and you say, "Well, I want to order this," and the waitress might say, "Well, that's my favorite dish too." That's happened to me more than once, and I didn't even know what that food was, but it sure broadened my horizons. And then some time went by, and I was going through a divorce. I just finished a divorce and some other problems, so I started a new job, and I needed a place to live, and there's a beautiful property that I wanted to purchase. And I went to one bank. No, you hear on the radio, I'm not giving any loans. It's during the Great Recession. Not on real estate. Real estate's down. Absolutely no loans out there. Went to bank after bank. They said, "No, you don't have any credit history. We're not giving out any loans right now." Absolutely not. Well, the ORI conference is just coming up, and I told a friend of mine, "I think I'm going to go down there." And she said, "You're going down there now? You're right in the middle of trying to buy this property." And I said, "Yeah, it might be the best thing that I do." So I went down to the ORI conference, and we went to basic dowsing class, and I asked if the class could to do a little dowsing for me to get that little cabin. And I walked out of the room and I got a phone call, and it was from the realtor saying that they had accepted my offer that I could buy it on a contract for deed. And they had absolutely not entertained that idea at all before that. And that was really a life changer for me. Suddenly I had a place to live, and you know, the water off that property is the best water you could ever drink. So I guess really the main thing is the dowsing it really helps. Well, another way that we use it is when my wife and I get into a discussion about what we should do. She might have one point of view, I might have another point of view, and it kind of gets to the real quiet time, and she'll say, Renne, get out your pendulum. And I'll get out the pendulum, and he'll kind of help us with that decision. And 9 times out of 10, it's absolutely the right decision. It might not be the one that we had even considered before. And I'm hoping that in some ways we can use the pendulum to find our bearings through these troubling times. And there's one thing about using dowsing. It's somehow, no matter how you use it, it gives you some type of hope. Like, who would have thought you could find a pipe, you know, that's been buried for 20 years underground with a wire? But with this piece of wire, it gives you hope that you can find that pipe. Who would have thought that with a pendulum you could find diseases in a body, and at the same time maybe hopefully find some help or relief, or maybe even a cure for that same disease with just a stone or a coin or a washer on the end of a string. And if we can just find our way, use the pendulum, use dowsing to just plot a course, to find our bearing in life, that would be a very, very hopeful thing. I want to thank you all. That's all I've got to say. Bye.